Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I'm your host, Wendy Corner, and this podcast is for you if you're an entrepreneur. Page, stage, entrepreneur, they all go together. Now, you may not consider yourself an author, but you might have a solo book out. You might have a chapter in an anthology. You might have a blog. But if you're an entrepreneur, I can pretty much guarantee you have socials, don't you? And what's that if it's not published work? We've got that side. Stage. Ooh, what about that? I'm not necessarily talking about a raised platform with a microphone, because a lot of people come to me and go, I can't do public speaking, it's too much. To which my response is, if you can have a one-on-one conversation, you can do a podcast like this. Just saying. So, page, stage, entrepreneur, welcome. You're in the right place. Now, today, I am really excited to have this conversation with Jimmy Z. Now, Jimmy I met through his darling wife. And then I saw on his socials that he's just got a book out. Oh, I'm excited. So I invited him on. Jimmy, you know far more about you than I do. Give us the cliff notes. How did you get from how did you get to where you are now? Over to you.
Very good. Well, Wendy, so grateful to be sharing this time with you today. Excited about this journey. As you asked that question, here I stand today with just about ready to launch my second book. I've got a copy of the author's proof in my hand. It's going to go live the first week in December, and we'll talk more about that. But how I got here today started for me kind of in two phases. Long time ago, I've been writing and communicating, doing marketing, doing presentations in sales. I've been in sales for 4 decades. But back in 2016 was when I started to evaluate highest and best use of me. What are the gifts and talents that I possess that I can actually use in a higher level to go to another level and get on stages or to be in front of people to inspire, impact them. And as I uncovered those characteristics and some of the skills that I have, one popped clearly to the top of the list, and that was speaking. Something I love to do is communicate in writing and words and music. And in doing that, I recognized what are some of the things I need to bring to the table to add credibility to my ability to get in front of people, to have an impact, to share my story, whether it's personally or professionally or however that might play out. And I realized one of the great elements that brings together some credibility and some authenticity would be to write. Now, I've written marketing materials and done presentations and utilized those things to communicate an individual message or do a presentation for work or whatever it might be. But how do I tell my story? How do I engage that? So I began a journey looking for the right kind of publisher. I could self-publish, go to traditional publisher, or find a boutique publisher, which I did. And the funny thing is, I started writing the book that I hold in my hand today. Now, it wasn't called Sales Perspective back then, but I started writing this in January of 2017, the idea of the book.
Yeah.
And I met with my publisher, and I also had a single sheet of paper with words written on both sides of it about this idea of building your personal board of directors. And after that interview, they said, listen, this sales book is good, but we really like this personal board of directors book. So I set this book aside after writing every day for 5 months and wrote the other book, published that, have been speaking about that quite a bit. It's my most requested topic. But I now decided really kind of launching the next big level is to take my sales experience and carry it over into the next phase for me, which is speaking full time and giving back and sharing. And that one book has now become a series. This is the second book in the series, and there will be more to come. But this book is the result of wanting to be an impact player, wanting to help people believe in themselves more, encourage, inspire them, use stories as the mechanism to communicate that message, and have the opportunity to share what's on my heart to help people become bigger, faster, stronger, accomplish what it is that they want. So that's a little
Oh,
snapshot into how I ended up where I am today.
great. So you kind of done the stage bit before you got to the page, and now you're combining the two as well. Love it.
That's correct. So most of it was some work driven, some men's groups driven, communicating, but being in front of others. I'm not afraid to speak to 1 or 10 or 100 or 10,000. And that's an uncommon, issue for a lot of people, but I've developed a comfort of how to communicate because my heart is to inspire and elevate others to climb to new heights in what they do. And because of that heart condition that I have to impact other people, I'm driven to get in front of the opportunities to my ideal clients and people who want to grow, not only personally, but also professionally.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. And that's the thing, isn't it? Audience, I'm going to do a quick aside to you, and Jimmy, help me out with this one. When you are in front of other people, the nerves are usually as a result of you focusing on you. But when you can turn your focus outwards to serving the people in front of you, my experience and those of my clients has been that the nerves tend to come down a notch or 100. What do you reckon to that?
I think that's completely spot on. I learned a lesson many years ago. I actually wrote about it and told the story in my book about the hammer and the nail versus the individual chair. There are some speakers who are so self-focused that they believe I'm a hammer and all the world's a nail. And if I just pound into you what I know, you'll be better off as a result. And so they get captivated by the sound of their own voice. Their focus is completely on themselves. That's the hammer and nail approach. The other approach would be the individual chair. I look out into the audience and I start thinking about the individual sitting in that there, individual in that chair, etc. And when I start thinking about how can I add value to that person, then it becomes a conversation. And then I think about adding value, and the perspective is not on me, but on them. And it changes the energy, the nervousness. I got to put things in sequence. No, I just got to add value to them. And it does lessen the nerves and also the bravado that comes from hearing the sound of my own voice to actually adding value to other people.
Yeah. And in that position, the person sitting in that individual chair, even though that individual chair may be one of 100,000, they feel as though you're talking directly to them.
Yes.
And there's nobody else in the room.
Yeah.
Just me. Because the what's in it for me is so important, isn't it? Because you then turn your focus out to the audience. They feel as though they're being spoken to as the most important person, the only person in the room.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to take you back in time. You mentioned about the fact that you've got this other book around having a personal board of directors.
Yes.
That I did not know about. That could be the topic of another conversation. But that book came out when?
2018.
2018. I'm going to go back in time. When did you first start writing? I mean, okay, the mechanics of it were probably around the age of 4 or 5. I'm not talking about that. When did you realize you were gifted and you enjoyed the art of writing?
I think if we're going to go back, it would start with writing marketing materials, advertising copy, promotional materials, presentations for an organization with the focus of I have one primary purpose, and that is to connect with who I'm talking to.
Right.
So I learned language, how to not just da, here's a proclamation, but how to actually communicate as if, like you and I are doing right now, having a conversation with someone. How can I use clarity in simply using my words and choosing words that simplify the message so that, I mean, I could easily tell you 5 stories that would captivate you, but what if I stopped and focused on what's the one story that would make a difference? And I got it smaller, got it tighter, got it clearer. The clearer I became in my writing, in my speaking, all of those things both fed off each other, and I narrowed the path to the point, whatever it is I was trying to communicate, to add value to someone else. And so that really kind of started back when I was doing presentations and writing, never really being afraid to speak. You know, it's funny, we talked about nerves a few minutes ago, and there are times when I'm going on stage where I'm nervous, but that nerves is usually 15, 30 minutes early. When I'm in that zone where I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go. And I can't wait. And I'm excited. I can't wait to get in front of people. I've been on stages where I'm waiting in line and I go, and I get to go. I get to go in 30 minutes. Or I get to go in 40. And I get excited and energized by that. So the nerves are gone because I have the opportunity to bless other people. And that
You're flipping the script in your mind, aren't
fires
you?
me up. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I use with my clients is if excited is a step too far right now, and you're very much in the nervous camp, the same neurotransmitter receptor sites are involved in both nerves and excitement. So I suggest that we go part the way along from the nerves to the excitement and opt for excitemus.
That's really good.
What? Well, you're halfway between nervous and excited, but you're leading with the excitement. Did you like that word? It's one what I made up. So we go with the excitement. And over time, you're getting closer to the excited than you were in the nervous. So it's a gradation for some of my clients. Yeah.
You know, it's really good to do that in kind of an incremental step. It's not this quantum leap. I can't turn all of that on, but I can go one step. You know, it's kind of like you thinking about what's your next best step. How about if I just go one step closer, one step closer, then I can slowly take the energy that's nervous away from opportunity to communicate. I love it.
Beautiful, thank you. So you started writing. Now, did you ever write at school?
Well, sure I did, but that was more assignment driven. As a musician, that is probably another aspect that drove me for writing music. Because I'm, you know, a song is a story, right? A song is communicating an energy, an emotion, a feeling, a specific target purpose. And so as a writer, obviously if I'm writing a song, I'm writing a song from anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 minutes. So you got to communicate a story in a handful of verses, you know, 2 or 3 verses with the chorus and a repeat, and that's it. End of story. So you got to be clear and you got to go back. And so choosing that helped me to choose the right words to convey the message in the simplest form, almost like writing poetry. Now, I've never really spent a lot of time writing poetry, but writing lyrics fed into the idea of writing. But I will tell you this honestly, back in 2016, when I had this evaluation of highest and best use of me, it was then, not before, that I thought about actually being an author, that I would actually write a book. That was never a dream as a kid. Being a musician, writing, communicating, marketing, presenting was always something I wanted to do, but writing a book? You can't see it right now. There's a big bookshelf here. There's another one right here. And that's only a portion of the books I own. As an author, I have many author friends, many speakers, national and international speakers as my friends, even on my personal board of directors. My team of mentors include people of that caliber. But being a published author, there's something pretty surreal about that accomplishment, especially because I didn't have that passion to be an author 20 years ago or 10 years ago even.
And when you get that first box package and you hold your book in your hand for the first time, and it doesn't matter whether that's your first book or your 20th book, it's still exciting.
It's okay. So, you know, as an author, there's a point where you have to stop writing it and say it's done. And it's really hard because you know what a book keeps doing? It keeps on writing itself over time. And that's where content and stories and presentations and maybe a revision down the road will come. But that you have to at some point say, here it is. But when this book showed up a week ago and I held it in my hand, This is 14 chapters of me. And when I read it and I understand it and I look at it and I go, this is something that's been on my heart to communicate and give back to organizations who are sales organizations who are looking for a fresh approach to not just grind out and close a bunch of sales, but how do we build relationships? How do we connect with people? How do I identify the most important perspective in the room? As we talked about as a speaker earlier, I had to come to the realization it's not me. The most important person in the room is this person sitting in that individual chair. And that same mentality comes when you're writing a book. I wanted it to be something that people who know me and read my books hear my voice when I'm telling a story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that is really fun. But there's magic when you're actually holding something. And what I learned when I wrote my first book, I learned that everybody has a book in them.
Yeah.
Very few people ever spend the time writing it or jotting it down or even documenting their notes or feelings or thoughts or experiences to even pass on to the next generation. So that has been a very exciting uncovering in my personal journey that, as I mentioned earlier, this started as a book on mentorship. And it's now become at least a 7-book series on perspective.
Wow.
Book number 2 is out. I'm going to write 2 more this coming year, and I'm going to keep the ball rolling because I am an author and I'm excited about it and how that can, when I'm not there, inspire, impact, and encourage other people.
Yeah, love it, love it. I'm going to go back to your lyrics writing for a minute.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that just pinged into my head then, audience, when you have a song in your head, you know the sort of earworms that will not go away? Those sticky phrases like the chorus. You can't remember all the lyrics to the verses, but you remember the chorus because it is repeated. And that's where you get sticky phrases, as I call them, through your presentations.
Right.
If you're using the same phrase over and again, it's seeding. This is important. Remember this one. And that's where you go with, as you were saying about narrowing down, you could tell 100 different stories to illustrate the same point, but you go down to the one, you make it clear, and there's a little bit of repetition in there with the same sort of phrases. That's the important one I want you to take away. Beautiful. Beautiful.
It's a unique way of reinforcing the message, the point you want to say. And sometimes you hear the language of a chorus in a song. That's, I remember that. But then if you go back and listen to it or read it, you can actually pull up lyrics to just about any song you want today and read through the lyrics. And then you see the journey that the story takes you on. But reinforcing or repeating actually drives home the message. When I wrote this book on sales, it's built around a solution. When I kind of broke it down into the components of here's what the challenges are in the marketplace. Here's a structure, a framework for a solution. And as a result of that, here's the outcome. Here's what's possible if you engage in a solution that solves some of the common problems in sales or sales strategy or sales management or whatever the methodology might be. And you take that same idea. And so I have a simple framework that is designed to do that. It becomes repeatable and we go step by step through it so that I know, okay, when I walk into every meeting I'm going to walk into, what are the 5 things I'm going to strive to do? What are the most important things I can do? What do I need to leave behind and set aside and stop talking about? And that all comes with focusing on the most important perspective in the room, which is not you, it's your customer. It's who you're talking to.
So good, so good. Thank you, thank you. So we've talked about your writing journey. I mean, the reason I was asking about whether you did things back in school days was because a number of the people that I've interviewed have been journaling their thoughts from way back when. And so they were in the habit of writing and exploring their thoughts in journal form. That was, and as you mentioned about poetry, a number of people have had forays into poetry as well. So I just love telling stories as to how people got to where they are. Thank you. So that was the writing bit. The speaking bit. Now, you've obviously been doing sales presentations. I'm going to ask you, growing up in the States, because this is something that was definitely not part of my education in the UK, did you have to do presentations in school as part of your curriculum? I mean, primary school.
Yes,
Yeah.
for certain classes, the answer in high school and in university, it was the same where, like, if I'm doing a public speaking class, yes, I got to get up in front, I got to deliver a content, and I got to have an introduction and a closing, and then tie them together, right? And I have to figure out how to do that, and that's the way you write a book too. And what's the through line from beginning to end? Like when you go see a play, from curtain up to curtain down, was it connected from beginning to end? And writing that way is not easy. Overall, organizing what you write is a different element. I will tell you honestly that my book came to me in a wide variety of issues. And then it was like, okay, here's kind of the big picture idea that I laid out. Here's the challenge, here's the solution, here's the outcome. But what goes where? And how do you figure that out? And so working through those elements becomes an important strategy. So I've tried to figure out, and those challenges for me really were born out of choosing the right words, which story fits, where does this idea go, and put those together. But back to your point about lyrics, though I didn't write poetry, I wrote a lot of lyrics, and agonized over them and listened to other things. Why did they say it that way? Ooh, that word was like a key that concluded what I wanted to communicate. So how can I incorporate that? And how can I use rhyme or not use rhyme when I'm telling a story? That, I think, is the area of writing that I did that was the most creative, was writing lyrics as a musician.
And pulling on, continuing the theme of the writing music thing, the music is so important to conveying those emotions. I mean, if you, audience, have you ever tried to watch a movie without the music? You know, it just does not work. I mean, think back to Jaws. You knew something was building.
That's
And
right.
as you deliver, as you speak to people, your voice becomes the soundtrack to your movie. It conveys the emotion as well as the visuals, but the power of your voice is so important.
Yeah.
Just going off on a side track there. Thank you. Okay, so that was your writing bit, your speaking bit. So you've had to do speaking through school, through university, through your. Did you go straight into sales?
Yes, I did. I worked for my father, had a building supply company. And so I was communicating one-on-one with clients and their customers. And then I would go out as I got into the insurance industry as a company rep, which I've done for 22 years. I actually get in front of prospective clients and do presentations, do big town hall meetings, MC those or present those. And I learned a lot of factors that come with speaking through those elements. And I also was a corporate trainer. I think one of the areas where I learned most of my skill was teaching insurance licensing or contractor licensing classes and adult education classes, where when I'm the only energy in the room for 8 hours, guess what? I need to be on, I need to be organized, and I need to realize that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, it's me, because everybody else has already done listening to me. And I had to learn structure, order. And then I started writing another element professionally, where I would create a 7-hour class. I would then teach it to a group of individuals, and we would go out and teach it all over the state of Minnesota in a 3-month period of time. We do 52 classes in 3 months, and we just jam it. But I created 7 hours of content and taught others, and we as a group would go out and do that. So that was probably the biggest growth aspect when it came to doing a presentation, because it's not just getting up and talking for 30 minutes.
No, it's not.
You're doing continuing education,
Yeah,
and trying to find ways to add value to the people in the room.
So what you've described there, you've done presentations, facilitations, MC, keynotes, those are all subtly different
Yes.
forms of speaking. There is a through line. There's a common skill set, but there are also subtly different extras that you need to adopt when doing those different things. And I think that's something that not everybody has the skill to do, and they are also very individual. Some of them you can take to a duck to water. I mean, improv and stand up, I love the idea of. I have not been courageous enough to try it yet. MC, yeah, fine. Keynoting, yeah, fine. Facilitation, training, absolutely. But this is the thing, audience, if you're thinking, I can't do this, break down the this. Where is it that you excel? Is it the one-on-one? Is it the facilitation, doing a workshop type thing? But as Jimmy said, whatever you're doing, you're adding value. And if the focus is on that, you can so easily take your page to stage. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
So we've done the page bit, we've done the stage bit. We've kind of explored this present book. Is there anything else you want to add to this? The excitement about this book, and it's coming out.
It'll be live wherever you buy books the first week in December, so December 2nd. There will be a book launch and global live stream, all things coming in December.
Make sure we have the link to that, please, to go in the show notes. Audience, if you've not come across this podcast before, the show notes are dynamic, by which I mean that when our lovely guests get back to me and go, huh, I've got a launch coming up. Oh, I've got this happening. I've got that happening. I go back in, change the show notes and do a quick socials blast going, oh, do you remember that conversation I had with Jimmy Z? Well, go back and check it out. Show notes have changed. There's extras in there. And if you haven't listened to the episode, go back and listen to it. So that's what we do.
Yeah, very good. I'll let you know for sure. That decision will be made this coming week, and this with specific dates and break that down. And so very excited about that opportunity. We're
recording this on the 22nd. It'll be the week that your book launches that we actually this will get aired.
That's correct.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. So yes, do make sure that we've got the link for those. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask you, do you have something special for our audience?
I do. So one of the things that you'll have the privilege of connecting with and engaging, a free resource for me, if you go to jimmyzspeaks.com/top10 guiding principles.
It is something in the show notes, guys, just so if you're trying to think, oh, hang on, what was that? Go check the show notes. Yes, please do carry on.
It's basically a two-sided document that's going to give you the ability to get a glimpse of what does it mean to have guiding principles. What really is the structure of what motivates you to communicate, to choose to write, or to get in front of people and share? What are the things that are part of your makeup? What are your guiding principles? Because those things will help drive you to prioritize what's important and set aside those things that are not necessary here, but what really helps you dig into and challenges you to dig into your makeup. I'll share with what my top 10 guiding principles are, and then give you your own blank worksheet to say, identify for yourself, what are the top 10 guiding principles that you want to carry forward in your life so you can make clear decisions about how you communicate, who you communicate to, and how that actually helps you gain clarity in moving forward with the principles that are most important to you.
Oh, love it. Thank you. I'm going to get that too. I'm going to sneak in ahead of the rest of you, because as soon as I get that link, that's me. Hosts perks. Love it. Thank you so much for that, Jimmy. That's really great. Now, I'm going to ask you, you're obviously very comfortable in the speaking and the writing perspective. So how do you embody your words when you take them from page to stage?
That is one of the great questions of challenging good communicators to understand that less is more. So what I do as a storyteller is I predominantly use visuals. In other words, I use a picture. For example, in my book, in chapter 5, I tell a story titled Diffusing the Bear. When I tell that story live, all I have on the screen is a picture of a bear charging through the water. And people go, it's the bear story, right? How do I diffuse the bear? And then I tell the story. I never put any text of any kind up there.
Yes.
I just use pictures. And then I tell a story because people get tied, connected very directly to that. And that fun, playful, imposing picture also causes them to be right in the story with me and understand what it is. So pictures are a big thing, but I also strive to live by the rule of 5 when it comes to presentation slides, which is no more than 5 words per line to the best of your ability, and no more than 5 lines per slide. You ever been in a presentation, you see a slide and it's all text and it's all this big and you can't understand it? And if you put everything up at once, people tend to read and not listen to what you're saying or miss the key point of the first element. So if you're confused or overwhelmed by what you want to communicate, don't put all 5 points up on the screen. Put one up there, reveal it, talk about it, tell them what you know about it, and then go to the next slide. So simply communicating with the rule of 5 helps me to simplify what the message is. Less text, larger font is so much easier on the audience to understand the point being made and the thought being fleshed out in your words. So if I give them a single sentence and then let's flesh it out, maybe word by word of what this idea actually means, and then throw a picture up there, I'm simplifying the transference of the idea from my brain and heart to their brain and their heart by engaging with pictures and appropriate simplified visuals. When I do that, or I'll walk them into a scenario. A number of years ago, I spoke at a national conference as the keynote speaker. There's 180 CEOs in the room. And I opened up with a story that let them know 2 things. Number one, that I knew exactly how their organization operated, because I told them a story about a Tuesday morning and a phone call that came into their office and what it meant to them and how they handled it and how it was potentially mishandled. And I did that so that everybody's in the story and also understand that I'm not just a guy spouting off ideas, but I understand how their business operates. And that was a great invitation. All I had on the screen was a picture of someone receiving a phone call. And I told the story for 10 minutes. And everybody was with me and understood that I understood what they were doing. So utilizing those kinds of things has helped me become a impactful communicator, and it gives me the best ability to add value. So it's not so much about what I have to say, but how I tie images and thoughts into a tangible idea that they can take away.
It's it, isn't it? Because as you said, if people have been to your presentations more than once and they see that bear up there, they go, oh yes, I know what this was about. And that's also the thing that when I've done presentations, and like you, I use images, because audience, if you're not aware of this, the average reader reads 250 words a minute. The average speaker is 150 words a minute. So if you have the text up there, people are reading ahead of you, they get to the bottom and they're thinking, oh, where are they? They have missed what you've said, and their mind is already on what's for tea tonight. The shopping list. Okay. So as Jimmy said, don't give them all the information on one slide. Those images are power-packed, because then when people say, oh, can we have the copy of the slides? You go, well, you can. It'll be useful for the people who were there as a reminder. But for people who weren't there, it's meaningless.
Right. That's right.
Unless you want to give it to the people who were there and get them to share the information. And that's when you can see whether they've got it or not.
Right. And so when you're tying together both the visuals and the words you choose, one of the most impactful books I read 3 years ago now was Kendra Hall's book, Stories That Stick. And there's a number of people who write about it, but the way she told stories and wrote about structure of how you create stories, depending upon who your audience is, really resonated so clearly with me. And I look back and see, that's how I've been doing it, but how can I refine that? How can I get better at it? How can I let my words be about stories? And when the story is inviting people into the story, you basically create a bridge between you and them that invites us to share information back and forth, because we've created that bridge by telling a story. Analogies, stories are one of the most impactful, effective ways to communicate back and forth with one another.
You can draw them into the scenario that you're painting so beautifully with your words, and they inhabit it with you. And they're not necessarily listening to quite what you're saying, because they're in it with them. And they go, well, how would I react in that situation?
That's right.
Absolutely. Very precious, very precious. Thank you so much for sharing how you embody your words from page to stage. As we're winding up, have we forgotten anything?
Nah, I think I've really enjoyed our time together today. And the only thing I would suggest, if people want to learn more, they can find me at jimmyzspeaks.com. Yes, I've got a long last name. I don't even say it right. It's Zugschwert or Zugschwert, or if you say it in German, it's Zugschwert.
Zugschwert.
I grew up as Jimmy Z, and it's been my handle for over 20 years in the industry. It's how people know me. It's how you'll find me. So jimmyzspeaks.com. And there are resources and connections and opportunities. If I can be of any value to you individually to grow, or your organization to grow, I'd be happy to reach out and connect and help. I also have some online courses that are available. If you want to do things on your own, that's fine. Or if there's somebody that, one of my favorite lines from John Maxwell, who do you know that I need to know? If there's someone that you know that could benefit from the idea of a fresh approach to sales, or building a team of mentors, or finding a communicator who is engaging, playful, and impactful, happy to help, happy to be there and participate.
Lovely, thank you. Do you have any words of wisdom to finish us off with?
When it comes to communicating, I would tell you one of my favorite quotes actually comes from Dale Carnegie. It's many years ago. He said, if you must have a good time meeting people if you want them to have a good time meeting you. So if you want to be engaging, then be engaging. If you want to connect with people, be willing and enjoy the journey of connecting with others, and your ability to be welcome wherever you go goes up tremendously, and you'll climb to new heights in your industry, in your family, in your neighborhood, wherever it is that you communicate. My dad said a long time ago, hey, Jimmy, life is a people business. You have to figure out how to work well and get along with others. And when you do that, you actually make a difference in the lives of other people. It's another beautiful way to add value. And
that's a beautiful way to end. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you so much for sharing your from page to stage.
Thank you, Wendy. But my privilege to be here with you today.
For now, everyone, bye from us.